as we know, your father is a Chinese and your mother is a British. It is said that your grandfather is among China's first pilots and won the special merit during the Korean War, 抗美援朝. So could you please tell us what kind of the person your grandfather was?
My grandfather华龙毅was a very, very special man. When I was growing up, he lived in Guangzhou, and so we actually spent a lot of time with him. It was obviously a very short train ride from Hong Kong up to Guangzhou to visit him and my nanai. And they were very special people and very special to myself and my little brother as well, because not only was my grandfather such a big figure, you know, it's really amazing as a grandchild to see a grandfather so respected by his peers, to be such a big personality, always leading the conversation, but also really an important part of my life as a connection to a really different period of history for China. You know, for myself as a dual heritage young child, a foot in two different cultures, to have that kind of grounding to that era, listening to him telling stories, listening to my grandmother telling stories, listening to my father and his sisters telling stories about them, was very important. I think it still has a huge influence on me now.
Did he tell us some stories during the war?
Yes, he had.
Have you remember?
Yes.
What kind of story? Yeah.
Well, I think the kind of personality that he was very open, very optimistic. He loved to tell his stories, and so he told a lot of stories about the war, about flying his planes in his squadron in North Korea, and you know, I heard a lot about, you know, both the fighting, but also the time he was shot down, when he met my grandmother. So my grandmother was a doctor, an Air Force doctor.
Air Force doctor.
Yeah, so he met her when he was shot down. So really very, very special, very interesting. But actually, funnily enough, and it still connects to me now, I think because I was a child when he was telling me his stories, actually, it was his stories as a child himself in Shanxi, and you know, swimming across the Yellow River to Yan'an. It was that stories of him as a child that really connected to me, and I found most interesting.
What was your grandfather influence on you?
I think it can't be understated how much of an influence he had. He's had a huge influence on the whole family, and that certainly had a huge influence on me indirectly and directly from him himself. I think he was an incredibly proud grandfather and father, you know, to my father and my aunts. He was also tremendously open and welcoming, because obviously, you know, my father married my mother. My mother's English. When my parents got married, they actually got married in the UK in Cambridge Cathedral, and there were lots of very interesting stories about my grandfather traveling to the UK. I think he went to visit the Imperial War Museum in the UK, and meeting my British grandfather. That kind of openness to the cross-cultural influences, it was very, very important to me, especially somebody who grew up being from dual heritage.